They know deep inside that they probably should not be feeling this way, yet they find it difficult to fully resist the pull of the emotion. In that uncertain and fragile moment, something within them begins to fracture even further. Every individual carries hidden fears and private desires, carefully stored away in the darker corners of their mind, often untouched and unspoken. But when life starts unfolding beyond their control, those hidden corners begin to stretch and expand, slowly pushing outward, searching for expression in some form or another. On the surface, they may appear composed, rational, and completely in control of themselves, yet the deeper layers of the mind never truly pretend. That inner world speaks in silence. It pulls without permission. It continues to whisper beneath every thought, every distraction, every attempt at logic. And in your absence, something within them has been activated. A quiet but persistent emotional pull begins to grow stronger inside their inner world. They start forming mental images that feel unusually vivid, almost painfully real. They imagine you living your life without them, smiling, moving forward, existing in a space where they are no longer central. They picture you engaging in new experiences, meeting new people, and building new memories while they remain stuck replaying fragments of the past. Each of these imagined scenes strikes at their pride in a subtle but powerful way. Every thought reminds them that they cannot force your attention anymore, nor can they easily reclaim what you have emotionally withdrawn from. And this is where things become more complicated and psychologically intense. This is the point where obsessive thinking patterns can begin to form, because the human mind struggles more with emptiness than it does with pain itself. A vacant emotional space feels uncomfortable, and the mind instinctively tries to fill it. When clear answers are not available, it begins creating its own explanations. They start constructing assumptions, meanings, and internal narratives just to make sense of the silence. They replay old conversations repeatedly in their mind, examining every detail as if hidden clues exist within them. Every memory becomes sharper, heavier, and more emotionally charged. Each reflection feels like it turns inward, pointing back at their own insecurities. Even the questions they form begin to carry emotional weight disguised as logic. Beneath it all, deeper instincts begin to surface, the parts of the mind that operate before reasoning, before social conditioning, before careful control. That raw inner system simply reacts, desires, and moves toward what it wants without explanation. Slowly, this deeper layer starts influencing their thoughts more than they realize. Plans begin forming beneath conscious awareness, shaped by emotion rather than logic. And somehow, you remain at the center of that internal movement. They may feel an increasing urge to reach out, to check on you, or to trigger some kind of response from you. Because when absence becomes emotionally strong enough, control starts to feel unfamiliar and distant. Desire begins to mix with anxiety, and both start to overpower clear thinking. The mind struggles to manage emotions it cannot fully regulate, and the internal pressure keeps building without release. Every sign of your independent life affects them more than they would openly admit. Every update, every achievement, every indication that you are continuing forward without them lands as another emotional impact. What makes this even more intense is that you cannot see what is happening within them. On the outside, everything may still appear normal, but internally they are caught in a storm of thoughts spiraling in multiple directions. This internal chaos was triggered simply because you chose to step back and withdraw your energy. It is no longer just emotional discomfort. It becomes a psychological weight that starts reshaping the way they interpret everything around them. It magnifies insecurity, highlights vulnerability, and intensifies every hidden fear they were previously able to ignore. And perhaps the most difficult part for them is that they do not fully understand why they feel this way. Their logical mind tries to stay composed, but deeper psychological layers have already taken control. They become trapped inside uncertainty, held by silence that feels louder than any words. Even though they may not show it openly, the tension continues to build within them in subtle ways. their thoughts become unstable, their emotions start overlapping, and their inner balance begins to weaken. Longing becomes tangled with fear, and hope slowly gets influenced by regret. Their fixation grows stronger, more persistent, and increasingly difficult to control. At a certain point, they begin approaching an emotional threshold, a space where internal pressure becomes difficult to manage. When the mind reaches this stage, it can either lead to transformation or internal collapse. And at the center of all this confusion, consciously or not, stands your presence through your absence. Your decision to step back has been working quietly and steadily, without noise or confrontation. The absence you created has begun dismantling the illusion of control they once believed they had. Slowly, the emotional mask they maintained starts to fall away. They are left facing the space you created, and in that space, they begin to see themselves more honestly than before. Not the version they show the world, but the version that exists underneath everything, vulnerable, uncertain, and emotionally exposed. And the uncomfortable truth is that they do not feel comfortable with what they see. They resist their own vulnerability. They resist their emotional dependency. They resist the fear of losing something that now feels significant. Yet despite all of this resistance, they cannot simply turn away from what is happening inside them. Because absence has revealed what presence and pursuit never allowed them to see. For many people, this level of self-confrontation never occurs in life. Most never get the chance to face their emotional reality so directly. Now they are standing in front of that reflection. They still want connection, but at the same time they are overwhelmed by the intensity of their own emotions. They crave closeness, yet they hesitate when they realize how deeply that craving runs. And this is where the inner mind becomes even louder than before, forcing awareness into places they previously avoided. It tells them they desire you, but the old pattern cannot continue in the same way. It makes them feel exposed, emotionally uncovered, and deeply seen in a way they were not prepared for. Their internal defenses begin to weaken further because what once protected their emotional stability no longer works the same way. Eventually, what has been building inside them starts to surface. They may attempt to reconnect in subtle ways or even more direct actions, but the dynamic has already shifted. The previous balance no longer exists. The sense of control they once believed in has already dissolved. At this stage, the truth becomes unavoidable. You were never something they could fully control or possess. And by stepping back, you placed them in front of a reflection they could not escape, their own inner world. Every hidden fear, every unresolved emotion, every suppressed desire begins rising to the surface. This reflection offers no comfort and no escape. It simply shows what is already there. They begin to notice their own patterns more clearly, their mistakes, their emotional reactions, and the moments they failed to value properly. Slowly, the weight of accountability becomes heavier because it is no longer about you alone. It becomes about them, their identity, their choices, and the structure of their emotional world. And in this silence, something very powerful happens. Awareness begins to form not through force, but through absence. No amount of chasing or explanation can create this kind of realization. True reflection only appears when space is created, when patterns are broken, and when silence replaces constant presence. Some will resist this realization, some will feel frustrated by it, and others may try to regain what they believe they lost. But regardless of their reaction, something within them inevitably shifts. They begin to see truths they previously avoided. They begin to understand emotions they once ignored. And this is the paradox of it all. Very little was done externally, yet internally everything has changed. Because when pursuit ends, something deeper begins. The story was never only about attachment to another person. It was also about self-awareness, emotional exposure, and inner confrontation. Standing in that silence, they finally begin to feel the presence of something they could not recognize before: your steadiness, your distance, and your refusal to remain caught in the same emotional cycle. This is what creates a new kind of realization within them, something words or arguments could never achieve. It is not manipulation, and it is not force. It is simply absence revealing truth. And within that truth, they begin to understand something they were avoiding for a long time. They cared, they desired, they feared loss, but ultimately, what they were trying to hold on to was never something they could truly own or control. And for the first time, they begin to face the realization that the person they were focused on was never meant to be possessed, only understood, experienced, and eventually released.